Dear colleagues, friends, guests, thank you so much. I think this is probably the most crowded this room has been so far. It's a great testament and a signal and evidence of how important Ukraine is for the bank. I also believe that it's a testament to how important the bank is for Ukraine. And of course, there's no better opportunity to discuss a very sad date, nearly a year of Russia's big, unprovoked, brutal attack against our country, than to talk to a person who lives all that is happening. And if I probably get Odile to open this session for us. Thank you.
Well, I would be extremely short just to thank you for coming, you in particular, but also all the guests and the participants. I think that for us, and this week for the bank is, for Ukraine, of course, is a, difficult moment. I think the bank has been very much focusing on what we can do to support since the beginning of the war. It has been a huge shock for us also, and we've been very much standing by Ukraine. So I'm very happy to have this opportunity also today to see, to discuss with you.
I think that, first of all, the 24th of February, in some philosophical way, it's still going for me. So it's still, it's a one long day, maybe sort of allusion or sort of allegory used by James Joyce in his Ulysses, when you're just living through the whole day and it's very long and you describe the things. So maybe these days of this year are like seconds or minutes of this day, of this long day. Because I remember it was like a very long, really day on the 24th of February. And I remember it started for me early in the morning, maybe earlier than for many others, because maybe I have this kind of feeling of prediction. I was not very, very cautious and very calm during the whole night. So I woke up at 3 a.m. in the morning, maybe 2:30 or 3 a.m. in the morning. So it was still a couple of hours before the full-scale invasion of Russia started. And I started scrolling the internet, and I remember I was right there in New York. It was the Security Council meeting, and it was broadcasted, and I remember all this tension there. And then also all of a sudden it was interrupted by breaking news that Putin addresses the nation. So when I understood that 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning Putin addresses the nation, this is it. So I was ready to hear these explosions that I've heard like immediately 15 minutes after he started talking. So I was already expecting him. And that it really came like right on my ear, because it was some of the explosions in the military airport, military air base of Vakarchuk. And so I dressed myself and started doing things that I'm still doing from the day one. And maybe because I'm preoccupied with things and a little bit busy, for me it's difficult to make some, helicopter view conclusions or philosophical assumptions, or which is not usual for me, because I like, analyzing things, and I like seeing like, big pictures, perspective. But because I'm doing this on a daily basis, everything, single day, we've got like only in the front line and in the hotspots of Ukraine, I got like 179 performances already, and counting. So I'm like always doing something. And for me, this is a constant struggle, but also a feeling like if some of you like running or long distance running, so it's like in the process. So you're running and you're focusing on your breath, on your muscle work, on your whatever, and you have just one aim. You want to have, marathon distance or whatever. You have 100 kilometers. Some of people do even that. So just you have one aim. Together, healthy, to make it and to make sure that you win. And for me, this situation now and the war we are in is like this big marathon. So I'm trying to focus just on one thing: how Ukraine can and will win. And I'm trying to do what I do. So frankly speaking, it didn't change me a lot. I'm as focused as it was before. I'm as committed as it was before. Maybe a couple of weeks, first weeks, the most difficult weeks, I was anxious, as most of us. Afterwards, I'm not anxious anymore. I'm just focused, and I know that we will win. It's only when and how. It's important questions. We can discuss them, but I don't have any doubts in Ukrainian victory. And not only psychologically, not only in terms of my belief and trust, because that's something that all of us have, but also intellectually. I see the path. I see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I have my calculus. I can understand how it will be. So one thing that I and probably nobody can understand and predict how big the price will be, and what Ukraine and the world, not only Ukraine, will pay for the craziness of one dictator or one nation, which actually bears and accepts this dictator. And so this is the question for me. So my answer shortly, it didn't change me a lot. It just made me a little bit more responsible.
Thank you. Then maybe just building on that, I remember you were a very active participant during the Orange Revolution in 2004, during the Revolution of Dignity in 2014, and you have been in Ukraine and you have seen the events over the last 12 months. So in your view, how has Ukrainian mentality changed, and how Ukrainians have evolved, if at all? I think they have, but would be curious to.
Mentality is a peculiar substance, so it was created by political scientists, and I'm not sure, frankly speaking, what it is. Because if I ask you what is Korean mentality, you will maybe explain me, but then I'll ask you, is it different for North Koreans and South Koreans? And if yes, they only 70 years ago, they were one nation. So I think that generally mentality is a function of your development, of historical development, of circumstances under which you are on many things. So it's a very dynamic thing. So don't treat a mentality as something given and predisposed, or something that you cannot change. I think we need to think just about the future, and the present shows that Ukrainians can be together, then can fight, and they do fight. They can be united when there is a big goal, and they are doing really well when the goal is really important for them. So I think Revolution and Dignity and Orange Revolutions were just first stages of logical, although very unpleasant and very, I think, sad set of events which came to the situation where we have. And this set of events was dictated by and driven by the fact that our neighbor Russian Federation never actually recognized the very existence of Ukraine as a nation. Sometimes they pretended it politically. So for 20 years, some plus, they pretended it like diplomats or politicians. But at the end of the day, deep inside or in their, doctrine or in their, future, they always were longing for the failure of Ukraine as a nation, and they wanted to do their best to make it happen. And Revolution of Dignity, it was maybe stage number one. Orange Revolution stage number one, when Russians tried to influence Ukraine politically. They failed, and then they tried to make a revenge when actually absolutely pro-Russian and a Russian puppet president was imposed literally to Ukrainian political landscape. We know, everybody knows what happened next, and then Revolution of Dignity was kind of once again a reminder the Ukrainians are not going to live under dictatorship, under authoritarian rule. So it was like number two. But I think Putin and his team, or I don't know if it's team or just a bunch of gangsters, they kind of, in real gangsters mentality, they didn't accept it. They didn't give in their strategy and their desire to dissolve Ukrainian independence and the Ukrainian political nation. So they acted in Crimea. They acted in Donbass. Their next idea was to impose unbearable tumor within Ukrainian body, a cancer tumor that would actually kill little by little the nation, which was they were trying to do with the help of Minsk agreements and generally having this unsolved Donbass question, and certainly benefiting from weakness of world reaction by taking the Crimea. And then when they understood it was not the case for Ukraine, because after the change of the president, they were, I think, thinking that maybe it will be a new page, a new deal, and something. So they gave Zelensky some time, and then when they saw it's not going to happen, well, in the way which is favorable for them, I think the only option they had, there was military options. So to some extent, it was predictable. For me, it was not unpredictable that it would happen that day. Or I'm honest, I didn't expect that it was going to happen in such a full scale, matter. But to some extent, for me, the events of 24th of February were not out of the blue. And like maybe for many people from Western Ukraine, we always expected something like that from Russia. And that was a kind of common feeling for people in Lviv and other Western regions, which suffered very much from Stalin regime in the 40s and were never part of Russian culture or Russian imperial culture before. So I think the most important thing that we now need to discuss is to not what was in the past, not which were mistakes, how we changed or not. Maybe yes, maybe that's a good question for political scientists or politicians or philosophers in like 20 years. Maybe a new Hannah Arendt will come and will write these great books about this war, like the original Hannah Arendt was written her books like Origin of the Banality of Evil and other books. But now we need to focus on practical things. We need to get the job done. We need to win this war. So for that, we need to discuss what should be done by Ukrainians and by the world for Ukrainians. And this is, I think, the most important topics now. To conclude, to wrap it up, I would say Ukrainians are true European Western civilization nation. We are the nation for whom basic values of Western civilization, like dignity, like freedom, like democracy, though it's not a value, it's more like a tool, but like freedom of choice, dignity, these are absolutely basic values for us. If it was not the case, our boys and girls wouldn't give up their lives right now while we're talking here. So this is the most serious proof. Ukrainians give up their life to defend these basic values, which actually are basic for people in the UK, in the United States, and other Western countries. So our mentality is Western mentality. Our cultural, let's say, differences, they are specialities, if you want to say, if you want to name it like that, are certainly different from others, but so are different, cultural differences of, French from Germans, or Dutch from English, and Ukrainians are different, but in the core, this is truly a European Western nation, in my opinion.
Thank you, Slava. And this really offers us a very good segue into the next question. As we were joking today in the morning that not only Ukraine will become European, but Europe will become Ukrainian more and more. And
like it became American after the World War II.
Yes, but in Europe specifically, we have witnessed some striking metamorphosis from Germany's Realpolitik and based on the extensive trade with Russia to Chancellor Scholz's famous Zeitenwende or the change of times speech and Leopard tanks commitments, from appeals by many top European politicians not to humiliate Russia to finally no red lines when it comes to supporting Ukraine. So do you think the Western world has finally realized what Russian dictatorship is, and what lessons should the West draw from this?
This is not an easy question, because I don't see a trivial answer for that question. I think the West and the world is still in the process of, processing everything. And not only the West, but also all of us. We are processing these news, these events, and we continue to do that. And it will take some time for us, for the whole world to understand the origin. So I don't think that European politicians now 100% understand what's going on, and maybe it will take some time for them. But the good news is that because every politician in the world, and especially those who are democratic politicians who are facing elections, they have always these good politicians have these gut feelings, they have intuition, so they intuitively understand that the northern wind is very dangerous, not only for Ukraine, or even not only for their own tenures in the governments, but generally for everything that will come after. So I think intuitively, people like Macron or Scholz or others who were hesitant at the very beginning, they start feeling this cold wind. And politicians, they are, if they're good politicians, and I assume those who are elected in countries like Germany and France, they must be good politicians, because the competition is very high. So they, I think, start feeling literally with their skin this cold wind, and they understand that it's coming. And I think this made them act more decisively, more swiftly, and maybe more practically. Generally, politicians, especially nowadays, I don't know why, maybe this was different in golden age of great politicians, which we all admire, and which we all say that they're not coming anymore. But nowadays, generally, fashion in politics is not to do anything, just in case not to spoil the things, So generally, they pretend not to do rather than to act quickly. And it's not that somebody, some personality is worse or more weak sometimes we say it's weakness. It's just general fashion in politics. Maybe it's good because you remember, like in older days, politicians or leaders were very decisive, and it ended up in many wars and many disasters and everything. So I'm not advocating just and I would say abundance of decisiveness, because sometimes you end up with making steps which are irreversible then, and then it's very difficult to, if the things if there's some bad things entangle, and then it's very difficult to come back. But I think in the 90s and the 2000s, this policy of not to spoil, not came to another extreme. So the politicians started acting like they do nothing, and they just talk, and they just have a lot of conferences. They have a lot of big so they discuss great big ideas, but they don't do anything in order to get them implemented, because it's like with green energy and everything, saving the world from and giving a new opportunity for a more healthy environment and fighting against global warming. But we see, and I'm actually a big adept of that. I think that's a great thing to do. But we always try to find the easiest solution. Fight against global warming is to get hooked on Russian carbons. I think it's not a real wise solution. So sometimes another thing that seeing the part of the picture, not seeing the whole picture, and we need the society. We are, I think, job to tell our politicians and to demand things, to do things that are not doing. And actually in the Western tradition, we do it in elections. Sometimes we go in the streets, sometimes we have demonstrations, sometimes we vote with internet, whatever. But sometimes we vote with money, but we need to do it. And I think that it's not only politicians in the West, but generally, I think people, the citizens of Western prosperous countries, I think it's their time for their leadership, personal leadership of all of them, to be more responsible, to be not just to delegate everything to the chancellor or to the president or to a prime minister, but just to be involved in everything, at least intellectually, at least mentally, maybe not necessarily in an executive way. At the end of the day, politicians need to do the job, but not to leave them alone with really difficult and, I would say, unseen for last generations challenges of big magnitude, which is not only the problem of politicians, but also the problem of every citizen of this country, of other countries in Europe and others. So I think, answering your question, I think that Ukraine now can teach the whole world of some things that, we have a very successful president with his leadership, especially in the West. He's doing a great job advocating Ukraine and everything. But it's not only him. It's 40 million plus of Ukrainians who every day on the front line, in the rear, in the rear front, in their jobs, in in the social networks, in blue collar, white collar, whoever, they all are fighting for the future of our children. And it's like, and I think the success, at least so far, or at least we cannot say it's success so far, but we would say the optimism that the world is seeing in Ukrainian case now is due to the fact that all of us are working like a family where everyone has its own or his own or her own role, very important role. And I think this is my message maybe to all Europeans and all people in the West. It's not only about Ukraine, and it's not Ukrainian case. If Ukraine and if the war in Ukraine ends the way Putin wants, the next day it will be figuratively or literally in the doorsteps of every person in the West. Literally, maybe, but figuratively, definitely. And yeah, so that probably everything I wanted to say in that matter.
Thank you, Slava. And this leads us to the next question. At the beginning of the war, it was very easy to do the fundraising in the sense that people were very much involved, donating a lot here in the West. A lot of it was hitting the nerve. And after some time, right, there has been a crisis in Europe in terms of energy crisis, record inflation, cost of living crisis, and there is a not a concern, but maybe in a way a concern that this fatigue, Ukrainian fatigue can start creeping in. So how do we fight this fatigue, and how do we keep focus on the war in Ukraine and make sure it stays on top of the agenda here in the West?
Giving examples, just being ourselves a good example. I'm not comparing it to the family question of raising kids, but to some extent it's like that. You'll never show your kid anything unless you do it. You need to do it yourself. So when Ukrainians continue fighting, fiercely fighting on the front and in the rear front, when we are doing right things, when we show the world our, as you say, perseverance, our grit, our courage, our whatever, you name it, a lot of good words, then I think it will help. If Ukrainians so the fatigue, the real fatigue, I mean the dangerous fatigue, can only come from within Ukraine. I don't think that the real fatigue, I mean the one that will spoil the things, will come from the West. Because at the end of the day, people are people, and they like to be inspired, they like to be encouraged by others, they like to be led by examples. And I think that the world helps Ukraine not only, and maybe not to the big extent, not because of just political or geopolitical reasons, but because they like the hero of this, unfortunately not movie, but let's say movie. They like it because what we are doing, it's like what heroes in movies, in good movies, are doing. We are fighting against evil. We're doing our best. We are not hesitating. We are not actually, we are anxious and we do have fear, but we don't show it. And we start to do whatever, we try to do whatever is needed. And so even the viewer in the movie theater, when he watches this, he wants somehow to get involved because he's sympathetic, and this kind of sympathy, it's a very, very, I would say, powerful source of inspirations for those in the West or other countries who can help. And yes, it's true that material problems and economic problems will drag the things down, but believe me, the emotional part is almost in every case it wins. You just need to make it. You just need to extract this emotion from people, and that's what we are trying to do. What our president is trying to do. It's what actually I'm trying to do here or yesterday. By the way, you say about fundraising, I'm not allowed to say how much money we got yesterday in my concert organized by Crown Agents, but it's a huge sum of money. I mean, I didn't even expect it. And it shows you that So we will make it the press release soon, couple of days, but like we can help like literally dozens of hospitals now. And so I see these people from the city, they come and they listen to what I sing and say, and they get inspired. Otherwise they wouldn't come, waste their time, and especially donate big sums of money. So for me, this is a sign. This is a concrete, practical sign that the fatigue, the real fatigue, the fundamental fatigue, is not a case unless Ukrainians will not show it themselves. And I know, and I'm sure that we will not. Maybe there is some informational fatigue or some kind of, you know, when you were on the headlines like for 2 months, literally in a row, it's absolutely understood that maybe, like, you know, you cannot feed people everywhere in the world just with frontline headlines in Ukraine, like in every single news outlet. So it's normal. I don't expect it to be like that for a long period of time. And you need to understand, I mean, you, everybody of us need to understand that this war is not going to end very soon. And that's also a very important message. We don't need to be shy and not to be afraid to say this message. It's a long story, and the quicker everybody understands that, the better it is for like our joint actions. But the irony is that the more decisive Western politicians become now and will be in their actions, in our military aid, financial aid, and everything, the shorter the war will be. So some people and some journalists ask me, maybe it's a sound argument that the more weapon you give to Ukraine, the more combat will continue, and the longer the war is going to be. For me, and I can defend this case with any argument because I have a lot of them. It's the opposite, the truth. The more weapon, sophisticated weapon, the more aid we have now, the more Russia gets sanctioned and isolated, the faster, the quicker the end of this nightmare will be. And that's, I think, little by little, I think politicians in the world start to understand that, and I think the decisiveness of their actions has significantly increased during this year. Look, the first months of war and now, like every 2 weeks, there is some new announcement, including, you know, from President Biden, from President Macron, from Chancellor Scholz and others. So it's coming. It's coming. It's maybe shorter than me as Ukrainian wants. Maybe the scope of it, like, you know, I would prefer more. But once again, we can only ask. We cannot demand, and we can give our arguments. We cannot beg, because it's not begging. It's not humanitarian aid. I think it's general. You know, it's a welfare for everybody in the future. But we can ask. We can insist. We can ask, being very, you know, kind of insisting. But certainly we cannot demand, because that's at the end of the day the sovereign decisions of every nation. And we hope this decision will be favorable for Ukraine.
Thank you. And maybe if we now focus on our heroes, the women and men who are on the front lines, you often travel there to offer your support, to sing for them. It's quite dangerous. You have been to Bakhmut just very recently, as far as I understand. So what makes you keep going there, and why do you feel this need to go there, to be there?
Hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian men and women are under constant risk every day, including on the front line. I cannot name the number of people on the front line. I actually don't know exactly, but even if I knew, I couldn't say that publicly. But it's hundreds of thousands, and they are exposed to this risk and danger every day. So I don't think that my exposure to this risk can even be comparable to this exposure to risk and danger of these brave men and women. So I couldn't help going there because if they are there, I need to be with them. Period. This is it. I don't see any other argument. After that, also, it's important that it helps because we didn't do it during the first months. We started actively going to the front line to see the troops just the end of March. It's not that I didn't want to do it before. I was just thinking maybe it's not up to the point, maybe it's not up to date, maybe it's something that will distract them. So we focused mostly on going to civilian places, like, we went to places like Okhtyrka, Chernihiv, Kharkiv, Mykolaiv, just to cheer up people, hospitals. But then one day it was absolutely by chance that we were invited. I was invited to go and to see the guys really in the trenches, and they all of them were so happy afterwards. So I decided to make it kind of on a, let's say, on a weekly basis, and it helps. And as far as it helps, and as far as I understand that it helps to win the war and to boost up the morale of the guys, I need to be there. I don't think that any danger or risk can be excuse for me if it's not excuse for all of them.
Thank you, Slava. You have this very beautiful song, which is called "Коли ми станемо собою," when we become ourselves.
Thank you. I was distracts me from Ash.
And this song, "Коли ми станемо собою," it kind of, in my understanding, you are singing about the victory when we finally can get to ourselves, right? To being creative, to building something beautiful, something constructive, to building the country of our dreams. So that's why I wanted to ask you, how do you see Ukraine after the war, and what is your vision for Ukraine that we want to build?
First of all, some reaction on reflection of what you said about the song. By no means I want to compare myself to great minds of past, but it reminds me of like when Socrates said something, every person could extract from his wisdom like completely the things that she or he wanted to. So there's this something about my songs. I've written so many songs, and I know that people just want to hear in these songs things they want to hear. And actually, this song was written about my personal, stuff and my relationship with me and with my beloved one. But I think it matches very well the situation in Ukraine, as well as maybe another dozen of my songs that people are playing now. Very few of them are actually about the war, although there are some, and especially in last years I've written maybe 5-6 songs that are dedicated to this awful war, but not this one. But I think that the good thing, the good song and a good poetry or a good thought should conclude different things, sometimes even the opposite. Yeah, but this is not the case. So I think it's good for me when I sing this song, and this song is one of my favorites on the front line. And I always say that we are becoming ourselves right now during this war. So "Коли ми станемо собою" means when we become ourselves, and we are becoming ourselves. And I think Ukrainian, very old and very, let's say, profound Ukrainian ethnical nation today is transforming ourselves day by day by every victory or even loss on the front line. We're transforming us into a deep and very strong political nation, and that's becoming the velocity of that, I mean, the speed of that is fascinating. So I think we've done more. We've come more part of this path during last year than probably last 30 years of our independence, and even more before that, because so many, Ukrainian, I call them Ukrainian founding fathers, like in America, so many great minds who are thinking and dreaming about a big Ukraine as a nation in 19th century, 20th century. It was rolling, but slowly. And then now, in the course of first 8 years, and now even more growing exponentially during this year. So at the end of this war will be not only military or political victory by Ukraine, but also a very important victory that we will become ourselves, those we wanted to be all the time. And yeah, maybe this song is about this.
Thank you, Slava. I think we should open the floor to questions in a moment, but maybe we can try and do the video of Alexander Matvichuk, if we can give it another try.
She's such a great person. I am really proud of her. I know her very well because we spent eight months at Stanford together. So one of great minds.
We face with unprecedented number of war crimes. Russia uses war crimes as the methods of warfare. Russia attempts to break people's resistance and occupy Ukraine by inflicting the immense pain on civilian population. We record this pain so that sooner or later all Russians who committed these crimes, as well as Putin, Lukashenko, and other senior political elite and high military command, will be brought to justice. I would never wish any nation to go through this experience, but these dramatic times provide Ukrainians the opportunity to reveal the best in us, to be courageous, to fight for freedom, to make difficult but right choices, to take burden on responsibility, to help each others. Now, like never before, we are acutely aware of what does it mean to be human beings. When we speak about Russian war against Ukraine, we speak about huge difference. Russia has a much more bigger military potential, a much more bigger human population, a much more bigger economical capacity. But Ukrainian example convincingly proves that people have much more power than even second army in the world. So I ask international community to help Ukraine to win. Let's make Ukrainian resilience and Ukrainian struggle for freedom and democracy become a successful story.
If I only may build up on that very short. Even more, it makes us better people. Not only extracts from us some good things, but it really changes us. It makes us better. It makes us whiter and soul and and our minds. Because the war, the origin of war is very simple. It's always black and white. The war, it's black and white, like life and death is black and white. And when it's black and white, it's easier for you to calibrate yourself, to see what's good, what's bad, to make right decisions. And I think Lesa is completely right to say that it helps us, and it's a great opportunity for Ukrainians to become really nation of good people. And yeah, so I totally agree with this.
Thank you. Any questions, please?
Hello, thanks very much for coming and for everything. My name is Svetlana Pyrkalo. I work here, and in this in EBRD. In this building, we discuss reconstruction regularly. Hopefully, soon we will start doing it on a large scale. But with reconstruction, there is also always talk about reform and the need for reform and the need for more reform and the need to fight corruption. In the Western narrative, EU and other countries, what's missing is the understanding of how much reform has already been implemented and what a path Ukraine has come. And some people in this room, of course, know exactly how much, but the majority of voices say, "Oh, there needs to be more." Can you tell us just a couple of words about your father's educational reform, which transformed the quality of people going to universities, transformed the educational system, and has actually brought us the society that we see today with the introduction of independent testing and eradication of corruption in that sector?
Thank you very much. I'm really honored to answer that question. I have nothing to do with this, but that's true that my dad, my late dad, he was responsible for implementing the very revolutionary for Ukraine educational reform, which allows now, it's actually a general examination which allows now everybody to make their make their way to higher education, not through let's say the gates of corrupted gates of this or that university, but generally, like in the West, gives opportunity to get tested on an absolutely just level and to see the real level of your potential and your knowledge. And that's why now people who even didn't imagine to send their kids to the universities before, like in remote villages and in people who from very poor families and from poor neighborhoods, they all of these people, all of these children now have chance to get higher education and to see a big perspectives in their careers, because at the end of the day, it's not about where you come from, it's about who you are. And this reform, yeah, it helped a lot. And I think the interesting thing about this reform, I can tell you some insights. When my father became a minister of education, it took him 2 weeks to sign this. I don't know how to say this, nakaz, order. Yeah, 2 weeks, not 2 years, not 2 months, but 2 weeks. He just settled down, and then he did it. There were many people, including in the leadership, who were not very happy with this, but he somehow kind of was able to get through it and to persuade, or to, I don't know, some things I know, some things I don't know. And he was just a man of great intuition, and he could make things happen. But the most important, he was devoted to that. And he was ready to resign any day if that doesn't happen. And I think there was many people were scared of this, because it was unusual by the time for a minister to be ready to resign in next second if this kind of thing will be not where we will be not accepted. Then another thing, ironic thing about the reform is that when the reform is good and people really see the impact of it, it's very difficult to revise it afterwards. And when Yanukovych came and his his team, once again, I would say only bunch of these cronies came, they wanted to revise the system suddenly, but they couldn't, because people would make a revolution earlier than a revolution of dignity if they could do it. So it was impossible. So if the reform is really good, the only thing you need to do is to make it happen. And then people, the constituency, will do the rest. They will make sure that you don't revise it. And nobody could make it happen, could revise it now. And unfortunately, during the war, some things are revised, but that's not because of corruption, because there is physically impossible sometimes to do, this testing in very dangerous places. But it's still going. Maybe when the war is over, we'll come back to the usual thing. Yeah, and this reform is very important. But nowadays, and it was probably the one very successful reform. But I would say nowadays, little by little, in some spheres, in some departments, we can see good signs of that. A great person and a good acquaintance of mine, the Minister of Digital Transformation, Mikhailo Fedorev, he's doing a great job in transforming Ukrainian, let's say, analog society into real digital society, and we really succeed on that. And it took him very short time just to make things happen. So if you have a goal, you have a vision, and you really are championing it. So not just saying something. If for you fear to fail this thing is bigger than the fear to lose your job, then you will then everything is gonna be all right. And little by little, I think Ukrainians are doing better. And I agree with you that the narrative, that Ukraine is a corrupt country and the country which is unfit for reform, had been circulated for a long time in these cabinets in London, in Paris, in DC, in Frankfurt, in Brussels, you name it. And I think I'm not trying to advocate those who are really corrupt, crooked, and thieves, which we have a lot. But frankly speaking, I think the big part of that narrative was especially for effort put by Russia to discredit Ukraine as a nation. And unfortunately, many Western leaders and Western nations, because Russia worked very well through informational channels, both online and offline, they got hooked by that. And now it's a sort of, a vicious circle. We would help you, but you are corrupted. And then you're corrupted, and that's why we don't help you. So certainly we need to cut it, and we are now cutting it by actually mostly by the nightmare on our front line and by deaths of our heroes there, and we are cutting it. And I know that it's an unofficial meeting, but I really want all of you to say this, to pass this message to all the leaders that you talk with. Ukraine has a lot of problems, but these are not fundamental problems that are making us unfit for something. This is typical thing for every country under development, starting from this country, which had a lot of corruption even during the end of 19th century when they were trying to rebuild their bureaucracy, and we all learned it, at least I've learned it in the universities, to any country, you name it, to the United States, which had before antitrust law, before Theodore Roosevelt, it was a nightmare. So we all know it. Ukrainians are not a unique case. Maybe we do some things later, that's true, but that's because historically we only got a real opportunity to become independent 30 years ago, but actually really independent becoming right now. So all is going to be good. Just help us.
Please. Hello, Slava. My name is Rustam. May I ask you a question? You mentioned that Ukraine will win with this war, and I do hope we will. However, different people put different means into it. So some people say a win will be when shooting stopped. For some people, it's back to the situation before February 20 last year. For some, maybe going back to 2014. And some people say maybe it's back to 1919, 91 boundaries, and Russia falling into many small countries, so it won't be able to start any new offensive. So what is your personal definition of Ukraine winning this war? And keep in mind that maybe the cost of ideal victory will be too high in terms of the soldier lives? Дякую.
Thank you very much. It's very difficult to discuss this question because, as you concluded, every single person life lost is a huge loss, as a huge burden, as a huge responsibility. But unfortunately, how cynical it could sound, but we need to operate when we talk about the country, like the country is the whole one organism, like one body. And here, medical analogy may be proper, because what Ukraine is now facing is a very, very strong virus. And to win is to defeat the virus. Sometimes to defeat the virus, you need to change your environment and to get rid of everything around you. Sometimes it's too difficult. You cannot change it. So you just defeat it inside. You do whatever is needed. Sometimes it's just medicine. Sometimes is surgery. Sometimes is chemo. Sometimes is whatever. So you have a lot of side effects and a lot of things that are very unpleasant, but you have one goal: to survive. One goal. And I think for Ukraine, the most important thing is to survive as a political nation, as an independent country, and as the country which is, it's a territory where the values I was talking about are widely accepted and are key to future prosperity, individual and common prosperity for everybody, for our children. And yes, it's very difficult to say concrete terms about that victory. For me, the victory is when we can one day start living normally and sustainable life, normally sustainable life, without strings attached, without this kind of spinal fear that something might happen. Sometimes, even in the diseases, in physical diseases, but as in a political situations, it's not easy to get a complete cure that makes you 100% healthy, but it is possible to make you healthy to the extent that you can continue to exist, to live a normal life. So we know the countries like, let's say, Israel, which is never 100% safe. They always, on alert. But they are living, they're prosperous, people are happy, and this is real life, and it's interesting life to develop your country and to become better and better and better. I've been to Israel for the last 20 years, and I see every couple of years how it changes for better and for better. You see Korea, the South Koreans who've chosen Western part of Western type of life are living on the constant threat, but they doing well. There are different cases like, Germany, which lived, unfortunately, under different systems, but then finally unified and come there, and the real, the dream came true, right? I don't want to predict any recipes for Ukraine. So far, our question is to win the war military and to get as many gains as possible. I'm not a military guy. I'm not a commander-in-chief. I'm not the president. And even the president, I remember, I agree with him. He said some very good words about, don't try to define the history, the victory now with concrete terms. It's very dangerous. So just do what you need to do, win the war. So we need to win the war. So far, we have all the options on the table. And for majority of Ukrainians, the real satisfaction will be when we get all our land back.
citizen by birth. And I would like to say that many Russian citizens who are in Russia and who live here were very, very ashamed and very upset when this aggression of our country started against Ukraine. The thing is, many times you were saying Russian people, Russia. Russian people who are against this aggression, right? This anti-humanitarian action, call this the war of Kremlin. My question is, how? Because we are started in our own skin to feel how many people from Ukraine started to avoid us, even without knowing our position. Nationalism is a terrible thing. I'm personally, as a Russian Jew, suffered myself from anti-Semitism in Russia, and I know what's mean nationalism. My question is, how in future, after the victory of Ukraine, we, as the different nations, at the same time, all human beings can avoid nationalism, can still listen to the music of Tchaikovsky and enjoy great Russian literature? This is my question. Thank you very much in advance.
Thank you. It's a good question, but I will come back with, if I may, in a Jewish way, on asking question for question. Do you? I mean, generally, a Jewish nation, generally, maybe you personally, have you forgiven the Germans for everything they did in the World War II? Yes. No. I mean, I'm asking, have you forgiven? That's what I'm trying to say. Ask.
Holocaust and who did it, who are not here, of course, we remembered and we learned the lessons. We haven't forgiven them,
Yeah.
right? But I think our forgiveness, we are not forgiven them because we remember what's happened. So I'm talking about the future. I'm talking about the Russian citizens, yes, who are not involved and who are against this conflict.
Yeah, I understand. So my question to you was, I wanted you to answer your question and then to understand. So I think that one day all wars are over one day, and suddenly after the war is over, there will be a time of so-called peaceful coexistence. However, which will be the peace, normal peace, a cold peace, whatever. But after the war is over, the peace comes back to agenda. And suddenly we understand that there will be some way of coexisting together. I mean, together in the world, like together, not together, sadly, but together in this world. But you answered your question. So maybe next generations of Russians, I hope, after the change of the regime and everything, as it usually happens, learn this lesson and do what Germans did after the Holocaust happened. Because Germany, as a great nation, as a really big nation, which had a sort of, let's say, blackout for 20 years, they found a big power as a great nation to come through this, really to live through this and to understand what was their how bad their role was. So they certainly, not all of them participated in great things, but they apologized as a nation because they understood that it was up to them to stop that, and they didn't do that. That's why they apologized as a nation. And I think that one day, maybe when the war is over, the new generation of Ukrainians will accept this apology if it will be a proper apology, but we will never forget.
Hello, Svetoslav. Very nice to meet you. My name is Anna. I'm a proud British Ukrainian living in London for 15 years, but originally from Kiev. if I may, can I ask you one personal question? You said that you didn't sleep the night before the 24th, and I think quite a lot of us share this sentiment. Do you sleep right now? How is your sleep pattern? And the second, less personal question is, you spoke a lot and very eloquently about meeting our, yes, heroes, women and men on the front line so many times. What is the most single inspirational thing which you can share about them in their qualities and personal traits, which you would like to portray, you know, Ukrainian heroes right now in the big audiences? What is the thing which, you know, makes us all proud to be Ukrainians? Thank you.
Okay, so I will start from the second question. It's more serious, and then I'll come back to the first one. There are first of all, I will tell you honestly that before the war started, there was an idea for me to either write a book of memories about my turbulent, both rock and roll and whatever, political, whatever. It's very, very, you know, amalgamatic past, to write the memories. And I seized this idea, and because I think it's not probably too early, maybe, I hope. But most importantly, because now the year I've lived through is already the year about which I can write a book of memories. And I'm getting I'm taking notes. I know every brigade we've been to. I know every the commander of brigade who I met. I see many people. I know many names of these boys and girls. So there are some photos of us. There are a lot of footage. I don't make. There is no deliberately. I'm not deliberately trying to shoot a movie, but many people do, but I just don't do it. There is no crew, nobody's going around. No, it's only me and a couple of my, let's say, friends. But I have a lot of facts, and I will share it. And probably this is the most, not probably, this is for sure the most important year of my life. And but it's not only because only bad things happen, but also because like half a year before the war started, 7 months before, I became a father of a beautiful son, and during the war I became a father of a beautiful daughter. She was born already in June during the war, and I was afraid that having little kids will make you more vulnerable, but in fact the opposite is the truth. It made me stronger, and it made me a part of some big social responsibility I always had. I have now very concrete, very, you know, instinctive, personal responsibility, and it helps a lot. It helps a lot to build your case. Why are you doing that? It's not just egoism. I do it for my children. No, it's just, it helps you to calibrate, because you're doing it for your children, but also for children of other people, because they are your children as much as their children, you know. And this helps you to make this story, you know, to wrap it up, you know. And coming from that to my sleep, yeah, you know, I'm I very rarely I see my family. First 3 or 4 months I haven't seen them at all during the war, because they were in a safe place without me. But then sometimes I have opportunity to see my wife and the kids, and it's like so I sleep well with them. Although my Solomia, she's 7 months old, it's very difficult to sleep with her, but I sleep well because I'm with them, and it's really good. Also, another place where you can sleep well is, ironically, but it's in the front line. I can tell you honestly, I've never slept in the trenches, but this is true. But I've slept many times very close, let's say, to a fighting line, and it's okay. You just sleep well. I don't know why. The worst is when you are like in places like Kiev, you expecting, you know, some missiles attack or something, so it makes you anxious. But even that, you know, I'm not Teflon, but sort of, you know, focused, and I don't care about all these things, and trying to do things. You do a lot of sports if you have time, and you get a lot of work and travel and everything, and somehow you get exhausted physically, and then you sleep. So my recipe: just get exhausted, and you'll sleep afterwards. And then about the case, I want to give you some positive case, because there are many negative cases, and I just don't want you to live through it right now. Like, I will tell you something from recent times. In Bakhmut, I've been there last time. It was 3 weeks ago or something. Maybe, I don't remember. Maybe not more than months. It was just middle. It was the end of January. Yeah. So when we went there, what struck me was the discrepancy between the real nightmare of a combat, and it's literally there, and this is a real fortress, and Russians actually literally burned so many of their people there for nothing, and they continue doing it. Unfortunately, our soldiers are also dying there, but and this is very intense. One of the most intensive, combat feelings that I had, because I've been to many places, and this is probably one of the most intense. So the shelling is constant. Like it's very difficult. You cannot make a step without being properly dressed, and all this gear and everything. So it's really tough. So all the soldiers who are not really fighting, they are in special, let's say, places, hidden undercover and in shelters. So it's there's no life. It's like apocalyptic, pictures, no life. But when you come at the very beginning of the city, in the outskirts, or I would say it's like a small neighborhood with like old Soviet 9 and 5-story buildings, right in the streets with this cannonade sound and everything, you see impromptu, market. You see just on the pavements, just literally all the people, men and women, just trying to sell, whatever. I was flabbergasted to see it, and they don't care. And when I asked, I didn't talk to them, but I asked the soldiers why they do it. And they say, because that makes them feel alive. That makes them feel alive. And I remember this picture, and I cannot, and you know what soldiers do? Soldiers don't need mostly what the stuff they sell, but they come and they buy, just because they want to help, and they are equipped and staffed very well. Everything is fine, and Ukrainian army nowadays is much better than it used to be. So they are fed well and everything, but they just go there, just kind of, and they say this is the process of two parts, and it makes these people feel alive. They persuade them to leave, but when they understand that these people don't want to leave, they understand that maybe this is the only thing they can do. They just, that kept them alive. And there is a huge risk, and civilians unfortunately being killed and are being killed right now. But maybe there is some great truth in this. I don't know, and it's something that I remember. I see it, and I remember. Maybe one day somebody will make a movie about this, even about this concrete thing. Somebody else? Yeah. I'm trying to see.
Hello, Slava. Just want to, I know very well you've been traveling in the eastern part of Ukraine, cities like Severodonetsk, Kramatorsk, Kharkiv, Bakhmut as well. In 2020, you recorded a video in a very small provincial town involving children in the home, children from the homes. It's small city of Lysychansk. What was this story behind this, and why did you pick
Can you speak a little bit louder, so I can hardly hear you?
I think in 2020 you recorded a video in a very provincial town involving kids from homes, and I just wanted to know what was the story behind it, and why did you pick this city? You could pick any, you could pick New York, you could pick any other, but why did you do it in Lysychansk? What was the story behind that?
You mean maybe you talk about the video that we made about on one of our songs? It was a duet with Ukrainian rapper Alona, and I think it was the song Kraina Ditei, maybe, and it was the project of my friend Slava Pilunsky, who has this project Zoltый Avtobus, Yellow Bus, and they help children to become to learn cinematography. And so we just decided to make this video of and to launch it on the International Kids Day. And we wanted to film them in this bombed school. And because that's actually, it was in their city. So we picked, I wasn't there, but they picked all these kids, and we wanted the world to see them, and there were their faces and their emotions and everything. So maybe you're talking about this, because I don't remember very well anything else about this.
Maybe one last question, and then we will wrap up.
Two last questions, because I said, well, 3 last questions before, so now it's 2.
Hello, Slava again. My name is Valeria. I'm recently in London. I think last time we met at a PGA conference in Kiev when you spoke really beautifully. This is an association of Western graduates.
Okay, yeah, I remember.
In Ukraine, yeah?
Yes.
And my question is, going back from people in the trenches, but there are now so many of us in the UK, in Europe, I don't know, they say 7 million, 8 million Ukrainians living abroad. What do you think is our mission? You know, like in Tibet, they say when Tibetans were forced out of Tibet, and Dalai Lama says the big mission was to bring the wisdom of Buddhism and Tibetan wisdom to the world. And if it wasn't for that terrible invasion, then that would probably never happen. So I'm looking for the mission. Thank you.
First of all, I really admire what people like Dalai Lama are doing, because it's a great job to make people better. But in the case of Tibetans, we know that if we talk about their personal, independence, or their personal desire to pursue their way of living, they lost the case. So Ukrainians unfortunately haven't, especially in the first 2 days or 2 weeks, like Putin wanted us. So important thing is that you not only can think about your country, but you can literally help it, because that's the case, natural case. The war is going on the air now. And I think it's extremely important that so many people are now exposed to all opportunities the West and other countries are given. So most of you, especially 100% of you here, are high qualified people who know their job and who are professionals. And I think your professional job on the benefit of Ukraine, advocating Ukraine, championing its, kind of agenda and everything, can really make a difference. So continue doing it. I think you're doing it. I'm not saying you're not, but just do it as hard as possible. Nobody asked me to do 179 concerts in the front line, maybe not a single one, but even I did 10, maybe people will be happy, but I do as many as I can. So it's the same. So do whatever you can every day. I'm one of these people who personally never blame and never say anything bad about people who left the country, because I think that there are so many cases, there are so many lives, there are so many different circumstances for every people. So you cannot judge a single person, especially women with kids. So we don't even discuss it. But you can use this opportunity. So I don't think you need any other goal or any other mission than the mission to obtain victory for Ukraine. So our brothers and sisters are doing it literally in the trenches, and we are doing it. I'm doing it with what I can do, and you do with what you can do. Another part of personal story, the day number 3 of the war, me and my brother, we went to a conscription point in Lviv, native city of Lviv, where we were, enlisted too, because we are, trained officers in the reserve by our education. So we went there and we actually enlisted to the army, and I'm officially a lieutenant of in the army now. And and at the very beginning we had this discussion with the responsible officer, with the colonel, and we were very open that we will do whatever needed. If we need to go to fight, we will. And he said, look, the most effective thing you can do is continue doing what you do, and just do it really with all soul, heart, and efforts you can. So that's actually what I'm doing. If you do your job well, not only like business job in a meaning like I don't know, earning money or making the company profitable, or if you work for nonprofit, just making it goals, but generally persuading this, like every day in your work, in your rest, just never lose an opportunity to help Ukraine. Never never turn your head back. Never turn yourself back. Just always be focused and do whatever needed. Sometimes it's donations. Sometimes it's arguments. Sometimes it's even a dinner with somebody who is probably not a big supporter of Ukraine, and just to make sure that he or she changes her mind or his mind. It's very important. You need to talk to people, especially here, who have different opinions. I want to address, by the way, this respected lady who was trying to say that we need to separate different people, like, for example, Russians, if they're good or bad. Yes, certainly. I know personally a lot of people who are Russians and who support Ukraine, and they're doing it openly, and they sacrifice a lot, and they want Ukraine to win. So you don't treat these people as enemies, but you work with them. You're trying to do things to make them on your side. Yeah, but I'm not talking only about these people, because I cannot understand how you can, frankly speaking, do your job normally living there, paying taxes there, and supporting all this kind of shit that is going on there. But anyway, so there are many things that you can do, but mission is one. Ukraine needs to win. The last question? The last, but not the least, right? Okay.
And maybe before, just a moment before we go to the last question. So this event, basically, we do have a fundraising part to it. And I would really encourage you, this is if you haven't done so, or maybe if you have and feel like donating again, please go and donate, because together with Slava's fund, People of the Future, we are basically fundraising for the medical equipment for 2 hospitals in Kharkiv region. So every donation would be really appreciated. And
Yes, please. I will not tell you how much money we get yesterday, not to discourage you, but it's a little bit different audience, a little bit different. So I understand.
maybe to motivate rather than discourage, right?
No, no, I mean, even the small, kind of money and little money or a little donation really makes a difference. It's not about magnitude. It's about your desire and just whatever. Sometimes it makes difference.
My name is Mila and I work at EBRD. I wasn't planning to ask a question actually, but I'd like to speak on behalf of Ukrainians who were in occupied territories all this time. Like my mom, she's still in Kherson, and they didn't want to leave because what she said was, "Who's gonna meet our boys when they come to free us?" And but also, I'm sorry, it's emotional. But also, for 9 months, it was really difficult for people without any information, without any sources of true information to be there, tortured sometimes, very often, not knowing what's happening, whether Ukraine will win or not, being told that they are betraying their country, staying under Russian occupation, but it wasn't possible to leave. And I know that some people would say that, okay, that's your fault, that's your choice. And there was no chance for them to voice their opinion then. So how did you feel about people in those areas? Obviously, a lot of people, and I know a lot of my friends, they went through difficult times thanks to your songs.
Thank you. I think you can predict my answer. I never try to blame people on the situations which don't depend on them. Sometimes we can say that situation depends on you, but this is not the case, because I know very well how extremely difficult was even geographically, even was the commute just to some place was a nightmare, was a real challenge. So certainly I agree that just to blame people who was forced to stay there under the circumstances, you cannot. Unfortunately, there were some people, not not a lot of them, we know, but some people who were very happy to collaborate, and not only to collaborate, like advocating the thing that the normal life should go, the hospital should work, the school should work, but they were actually doing terrible things and making the life of patriots very, really, really bad. So these collaborators, I don't think that they can be treated well in any nation. And ironically, and maybe absolutely just, Russians also didn't treat them well, because nobody likes traitors, And but I will tell you one personal story once again, because I know them a lot now. Not personal, but I mean like the one that is concrete story. And from Kherson, and maybe that will be an answer to a question. So there is a children's hospital in Kherson, and I went to see them when I was now in Kherson. I went to see them, and I talked to the staff, and I talked to the head of the hospital. And she told me that during the occupation, it was really difficult for them to operate, but they not only did that, not only cure and heal people, not only like got kids healthier, but also saved them literally. Yeah, I don't know if you know that, but I can tell you what they did. So as you know, Russians absolutely barbarically, like, you know, the Huns in all the times, they take a lot of Ukrainian children and they just expel them from the families and then bring them back to Russia. And there are some people say that there are hundreds of thousands of children like that now. So this horrible thing, and they sadly wanted to do it in Kherson. So actually, these people in under the risk of their life. So they got people, they got kids to hospitals, especially those who were already there, and they pretended them to be not transportable, and they actually made it up, just not in order not to get them from these hospitals and to bring so Russians could bring it there. So they did it in the huge risk, but they still did it every single day. So they saved literally couple of dozens of children right there in their hospital. And you hear this and you think that you're hearing or you're reading or you're watching the stories of World War II, of, you know, I don't know, you know, people hiding Jews from Nazis or something. But that's happening nowadays in my country, you know, 21st century. And people are doing these heroic deeds. If not these doctors in this hospital, who would do that? So they did their job, and I'm really grateful, and I think they're heroes to operate under this occupation the way they did. I think they should be not blamed but awarded. So this is my answer.
Thank you. Yeah, and actually people were hiding Ukrainian flags in plastic bags in their gardens, just dig them in to make sure that when Ukrainian army comes, they can get them out.
Yeah, that's,
thank you very much.
That I think this thing needs applause as well.
Thank you very much. So I think we will be concluding now, and you are cordially invited to the small reception in the Anti area. And please do spread the word, and please do donate to support the fundraising so we can help.
What is Anti area? Like antimateria. Right. It's like antimaterials. Okay, thank you very much once again. It was a pleasure for me to be here. And just to remind everybody that if you want to see me in action and you're still here and you're here for some significant time, so on April 13, Okean Elza is playing in the Royal Albert Hall, so you're all invited.